You are listening to Hillary Topper on Air. And now, here's your host, Hillary Topper.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we're exploring how cutting-edge technology is changing the way athletes train and perform. Whether you're a seasoned triathlete, a dedicated runner, or just starting to dabble in endurance sports, getting the most out of your training is always a top priority. And now, thanks to artificial intelligence, the days of trial and error training might just be behind us. I'm thrilled to have Brady Hoover with us today. Brady is a key player at TriDot and RunDot, two revolutionary programs using AI to help triathletes and runners unlock their true potential. This isn't just about logging miles or sticking to a generic training plan. It's about harnessing data and personalization in ways we've never seen before. So, welcome, Brady, to the show. Can you talk a little bit about TriDot and RunDot and what do these programs offer and how are they changing the game for athletes, triathletes, and runners?
Sure. So it was many years ago, many moons ago that TriDot was launched. So TriDot stands for Triathlon Data Optimized Training, and RunDot was launched 3 years ago now. 3 years ago this past May. Run Data Optimized Training. So what that is artificial intelligence, uses AI, artificial intelligence, to understand the athlete, what they're capable of. So upon an athlete onboarding, they get a training stress profile. It's weighing in their age, their gender, genetics, and we'll touch base on that later on. And it's weighing all these in to come up with a personalized, tailored training program to help the athlete get to their goals.
And so, all right, so AI is a huge buzzword, right? Like in so many different industries, so many people are so afraid of AI. Um, but when it comes to sports training, not everyone understands how it actually works. Can you explain how TriDot and RunDot use AI to create a truly personalized training plan for athletes?
Absolutely. This one might take me a little while to explain, so I hope we got some time here. So, over the years, technology has developed through a lot of wearable technologies. A lot of folks are familiar with Garmin watches, Apple watches, Polar watches, some of those big players on the market. With this wearable technology, we can get data on athletes. And when they set up a profile, an athlete profile, we can understand, who they are as a person, what's their age, what's their genetics, what's their gender. All of these things are being taken into account when they set up their device connection, whether that's the Garmin, their Apple Watch, whatever preferred training device. TriDot and RunDot are able to look back up to 2 years, depending on the device and how much history they're willing to share. I know with Garmin we can go 2 years back. With Apple, it's more like 6 months. So it varies from device to device, but really we're using those last 30 to 45 days of training to quantify, okay, what level of training have they been doing? At what intensity? What's their heart rate, what's their pace? All of these factors are coming into play here. When an athlete onboards to either RunDot or TriDot, they're asked a series of questions. If they're a triathlete, they're asked for their swim threshold, their bike threshold, their run threshold. A lot of athletes don't usually know this. Some do. I would say a small percentage do. So that we have a bot called Dottie. Dottie, for those that are in the triathlon world, Dottie is a unicorn. You'll see her at many Ironman branded races. Dottie asks some simple questions to try to understand what that athlete's capabilities is in the swim, bike, and run. And then it's able to formulate an athlete profile and quantify previous training data to set up a training stress profile. On the RunDot side, it's asking, Dotties doesn't have to be as involved as much. Usually athletes know what their 5K or 10K time is. So they can input that there, but some don't. So Dottie can come into play and ask some simple questions to understand that athlete and say, comes up with a range. And then upon doing that, each athlete is given a DOT score. This is the data optimized training score. On TriDot, there's a swim dot, a bike dot, and a run dot. On RunDot, there's just a run dot. What that is based on, let's just take the run, for example. It's based on their age, their gender, and their threshold pace. And the higher that number, it's anywhere from 0 to 100, but 100 would be world record pace. Now a 70-year-old might come onto the platform and they might be capable of running like a 23-minute 5K, let's say. Well, that's going to give them a RunDot score of probably somewhere in the high 80s. Whereas, let's say a male runner comes on at 18 years old, 27, does a 27-minute 5K. Well, that's more going to be like a 40, right? It's relative to their age and gender. So an athlete can quickly determine, okay, where do I stack up in my respective age group? And in the sport of triathlon, you've got swim, bike, and run. So it's like, well, I know I'm a good runner, but how do I stack up in the cycling? I can do, a 15-mile-an-hour bike split on a 70.3, but where is that relative? So it helps the athlete like understand who they are as an athlete. And then if they're on TriDot's able to see that and say, okay, this athlete has a swim dot score of, let's say, 65, a bike dot score of 50, and a run dot score of 75. Okay, they're going to run really well off the bike. TriDot's able to say, well, to make this athlete a more well-rounded athlete, we need to improve their bike. And it makes it really easy for us coaches to see that data, interpret that data, and say, okay, well, I know in the off season what I'm working on with this athlete, or in season, I might say, well, we know you can run really well off the bike, so got a race coming up, 70.3. Maybe we drop that run volume down to just a couple of times a week, because I can make this athlete a more well-rounded athlete if I can improve their bike fitness, right? They're going to be better in the long run. So that's like a high-level overview as to what it can do and what it does.
TriDot and RunDot adapts and evolves over time. How does it gather and interpret data and make adjustments on someone's training schedule?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Happy to answer this question. So an athlete, they have their threshold pace. So many years ago, training people invented something called training stress, which is the amount of stress that's placed on the body when they're doing a given training based on your thresholds, right? So if your thresholds are correct, it's that assumption, right? So let's take running, for example. Threshold is what we call 1 hour pace, the fastest pace that someone can run for 1 hour. If they held that for 1 hour, that would be 100 TSS. So that's how training is scored. In the same token, if they were a triathlete and they were a cyclist, their functional threshold power generally will test an athlete. They'll do a 20-minute test. They're going to hold the highest wattage that they can. We'll take about 95% of this. I mean, TriDot has its own metrics and algorithm to calculate this by age, gender, just so many things that come into play here. So it's not exactly 95%. Now, if that cyclist was to ride for an hour at their threshold pace, that too would be a 100 TSS training stress score. But we know that which one's gonna beat up the athlete more? Is it equal? Is riding at threshold pace for an hour or running at threshold pace for an hour? Which one's harder to do? Well, we know that the running, because of the impact of running, the weight bearing and the impact, it's higher training stress. So we've developed something called normalized training stress. So these are things that are being taken into account to develop a training plan. Now, in the same token, let's just say that this athlete's threshold running pace is an 8-minute mile. That's the fastest pace that they can hold for 1 hour. Training stress is going to say, well, for 1 hour, if the athlete holds that for 1 hour, 8-minute mile, that's 100 training stress. Now, if they do that in 50-degree weather or 90-degree weather, it's still 100 training stress. What TriDot and RunDot do is we have something called environment normalization, where we know that it's a lot harder to run in an hour for an 8-minute pace in 90-degree weather than it is in 50-degree weather. So what TriDot and RunDot is doing is it's looking at, okay, how much actual stress was accumulated by this athlete, and then it's making changes to future training based on what they did or didn't do. If they went out for a run, I always tell my athletes, before you go out for a run, especially in the summertime, if you're running at say 8 a.m., you could have between 8 a.m., it could be 65 degrees. By 9 a.m., it could be 75 degrees. Like you have a big temperature swing. So I say, look at the time, look at go ahead and set your time for 8:30 a.m. and then go out and do your run. You're going to notice that if you have a threshold repeats today, rather than running an 8-minute pace, because it's going to be 75 degrees when you start doing those intervals, you're going to be running 8:15, right?
That's interesting.
So I call it permission to slow down, because that is to adjust to the environment and those external stresses that are placed on the athlete. We have to take that into account, because we know it's harder to hold that same pace in a hotter temperature. Now, say the athlete forgets to do that stuff, which I do the first hot day of every time. I just go out and I just do the run, and I come back and I get a terrible training execution score, right? Well, TriDot's going to recognize, whoa, you accumulated a lot of normalized training stress, and it's going to make changes to the macro cycle of that training plan because I overshot and I accumulated too much stress. So I might look out, say, 2 weeks from now, and I might see a long run for an hour, 20 minutes with 2 by 6 minutes at threshold pace. I'll write that down. I'll come to that weekend, that hypothetical weekend 2 weeks later, and say it's today, and I look and I go, an hour 20, but I've got 2 by 6 at zone 3, not zone 4. What happened? Oh, it's the changes, the way the program adapted and had to make modifications because I was accumulating too much training stress on a daily and weekly basis, that I was going to set myself up for overtraining and potential risk of injury. So what TriDot and RunDot are doing is it's analyzing all those data points: heart rate, weather, environment, humidity, and it's making changes based on what the athlete is doing or not doing. So say an athlete takes 2 weeks off of training, and they look a month out and they see they have a 3-hour bike ride, and they look a month out, they write that down. That hypothetical month comes, they took 2 weeks off of training, and they come to that weekend, here we are a month later, and all of a sudden it's 2 hours and, let's say, 2 hours 15 minutes. We wouldn't drop that much, but there would be some modifications, right? Because we have to get the athlete back on course. The way I like to explain it is I call it's GPS for humans, right? You have your big events, those A races. Say I live in Massachusetts to Florida, and I'm driving to Florida, and that's my final destination, right? If I stop and get gas, well, we call that a B race, right? It's a quick, it's gonna adjust the time, my expected time of arrival, just a little bit. When I put in those big races, well, it could have a bigger impact. I say that I'm getting off the highway and I'm spending the night. So it's taking in all of these things into account to develop a training plan. Now, an athlete might come on to TriDot, RunDot. They say, I haven't put in a race yet. What am I training for? Right? So when there's no race in there, the athlete's in what we call a development phase, where the name of the game is to develop speed and power, right? We want to get that athlete as strong, as fast as possible. So the intensity is a little higher during this phase, specific to the athlete. But the volume is a lot lower than when they're actually preparing for, whatever event that they might be doing.
So, oh no, that was great. So a lot of people look at TriDot, the schedule, right? And the schedule is I guess you could compare it to Training Peaks, but it's not. I mean, it does give you a specific guide as to what to do. A lot of people want to change the schedule. Maybe it's going to rain one day. Maybe it's going to, maybe they're taking the day off, or they want to change the schedule around a little bit. Does the AI program adapt to that? And what if they don't do a specific training? Like, what if they skip a couple of bikes that week, or a run that week, or what have you? How does that work in terms of the program?
Yeah, so the athlete, and if the athlete's working with a coach, has, pretty much full control over their training schedule to a certain extent. An athlete working with a coach, the coach has full control. They can remove sessions, they can add sessions. An athlete has the ability to control the frequency, right? We have a couple of different settings, whether it's low volume, standard volume, high volume. If that's on RunDot, if you're on TriDot, you have low, standard, and high for swim, bike, and run. So you can play with those settings. It's going to tell you the frequency of workouts to expect. Like if you're on low volume swim, it's going to say, well, it's going to prescribe 2 swims per week. In addition to that, there's an advanced scheduler where you could actually tell the system, I can swim only twice a week because logistics of getting to the pool. I want to cycle 4 times a week because I know I got to develop my cycling, and I'm going to run 2 times a week. So you can be very specific. And then taking into account the weather changes, right? And it's a rainy day. Well, you can easily, just like in Training Peaks, you can easily take the workout and you can drag it to the next day. So let's see, tomorrow I have a bike workout. Well, we have nice weather, but if I look further ahead, maybe Wednesday is going to rain. Well, I could move Wednesday's run workout to tomorrow and Tuesday's bike workout to Wednesday. It won't be an issue with that, and the system's not going to change anything at that point. Now, if I missed a couple of those workouts, say the weather was bad or just life got busy and I missed a couple of those workouts, I'll likely see changes to the following week. It's usually within the following microcycle or the one right after that. So it's within that macro cycle that the athlete is currently in, is where they're going to see changes. Some athletes, they can skip a couple workouts and they can get right back into the thick of it. Like they lost nothing. If it's a short duration, like if it's just a couple of days, usually no changes have to be made unless the athlete's sick. Then that's where a coach might ease them back into it. And I say to athletes that I'm not coaching but are training on TriDot or RunDot and asking those questions, if they get sick, well, everybody recovers from illness differently. Some people, they're better 2 days later and they can get back to their regularly scheduled training. Others, they might need to ease back into it. So I always tell the athletes, the prescription is there, right? It might tell you to do 3 1-mile repeats, but if you're just getting over illness and you go for 1 and the body pushes back, stay with 1. The training plan is going to adapt. In the same token, if it's stressful, if you have a stressful week, well, stress is stress. It doesn't matter if it's physical, mental, emotional. The body still sees it almost the same way. Stress can zap you more than a workout, and a lot of athletes don't realize that and understand that, but it can. So I say, when in doubt, you can go zone 2. The training plan will adapt. I say, to athletes when they're sick or they're going through a lot of stress, just move your body, right? The training plan is there. The duration of the training is going to get you to the finish line. The intensity and the intervals that you're doing will get you there a little bit faster, and the training plan will adapt. So do what's best for you at that point.
So let's talk about mental fatigue and physical burnout, which is a huge concern for endurance athletes. How does TriDot and RunDot address these challenges to help athletes not only train harder, but also smarter?
Yeah, so that's the name of the game with TriDot and RunDot. There is a cause and effect, right? Of everyone's like, oh, if I want to get faster, I just got to run more miles. Well, there is a breaking point to that. So TriDot has analyzed millions of data points and come up with, we call it strong before long, fast before far. What I hear this every once in a while when an athlete comes over to TriDot and they're in the triathlon world and they're doing half Ironman. They're like, Coach, I'm used to 15 to 18 hours of training in a week. When is that going to come in? And it's like, well, there's less of what I say, once you really get into the thick of the training, you'll realize there's a little bit more intensity than what you're used to, but we're not getting as much volume, because with extra volume, form can start to go. So say we have a runner's a really good runner can hold their running form, like good running form, for about 90 minutes. After 90 minutes, their running form starts to deteriorate and their risk of injury goes up. Yes, it's necessary if they're trying to run an Ironman or a marathon. It's necessary to go further, but there is a point where going further can actually further hinder the athlete. So there tends to be a cap, and that cap can be 2 hours and 45 minutes to 3 hours, say, on the run, because at that point, the risk of injury is exponential.
Wow.
So we're trading a little bit higher quality for less quantity. I was skeptical when I first came on, and I think we'll get to that later on with success stories of athletes and stuff like that. But yeah, that's one of the common things we hear is, oh, there's not enough volume. And then it's like, trust the process, trust the process. We have a great TriDot and RunDot and soon to be RunDot community, which is coming really, really soon, that I'm excited about. Where there's other athletes in there and coaches that just say, they'll say, trust the training, trust the training. I thought the same thing at first. And, I had a PR that season or.
Yeah. So tell us about that.
Yeah.
Give us a little rundown there.
So, previous to me coaching on TriDot, and of course now I have the luxury of working for TriDot, which I never thought I'd be working for a coaching platform. I just always thought I was going to be a coach, but opportunity came my way. It was 2019. I heard about TriDot in 2018. My coach at the time was talking about AI and said, oh, AI is going to replace coaching at some point. And I said, I don't think AI is going to replace coaching. I said, AI is never going to be able to, maybe it will way down in the future, be able to do run gait analysis, develop a really good strength training program, really catered nutrition plan and race execution plan for the athlete. Like it would take a long time for AI to go there. I said, I think when AI comes out, it's going to be writing the training programs. It's going to be interpreting the data because it can do it much faster and more successful than I can, especially when you have a large pool of athletes. I said, I think it's going to replace those athletes, those coaches that don't use AI for coaching. Reason being, those coaches are going to be able to offer more services that are going to better those athletes. Because the biggest time suck of mine was writing the training program. When I was managing 22 athletes, it was 6 hours every single Friday, where I was doing 12 on one Friday, 12 the other Friday, or it was 11 and 11. And it was, cumbersome. I loved it. I loved developing the training plan, but I knew that I could better serve my athletes if something else could write the training plan and I could motivate them, coach them, help them through these scenarios, actually teach them the sport and not just be there to write a training plan and manage it, right? But actually, soup to nuts, coach them and, everything that they might need. 2018, I heard about TriDot after Ironman Arizona. I jumped on TriDot. I said, I got to give this, I'm curious about this. I'm open to it. I'm receptive. I know it's the wave of the future at the time. And fast forward to where we are now, and the future's here. I said, I'm curious about this. I'm going to try it out. So I jumped on a TriDot trial. They had a 60-day trial at the time. So I tried it out. And that fall, I had ran a 2:56 marathon at the Philadelphia Marathon. I had done a 4:48 half Ironman working with a coach at the time. 4:48 half Ironman in September. And I went 10 hours and 6 minutes at Ironman Arizona. So I was curious. I was training for Boston. And I said, I'm going to try this for Boston. I'm going to try this because I'm curious about it. And I know I could coach athletes on it. I want to get a feel for it first. So I jumped on And I was one of those athletes. I'm not getting enough training volume. I'm not running enough. I was used to running 4 days a week. I jumped onto TriDot. It had me swim. I was getting ready for the Boston Marathon. It was I was swimming twice a week. I was cycling 3 times a week, and I was running 2 times a week. And then I had one run off the bike, so I'll call it 2.5 times a week. So I'd have my speed work day, my long run day, and then an easy 20-minute run off the bike. That was it. And I was like, I'm not running enough. 4 weeks into it, my assessment week came up. I increased my bike wattage, and I also had a 5K test later that week. And I knew that after those 4 weeks, I said, actually, my running is feeling better for some reason when I'm out there running. Did the 5K and dropped some time. And I said, oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to stay the course. Well, fast forward to Boston, where I continued on this, what I thought was not enough run training. And I ran 251 on a 75-degree day.
Wow.
When I ran 256 in Philly, 7 months earlier, it was a 55-degree. You couldn't have asked for a better day. So had the weather been cooler, I don't know what I would have ran.
Wow.
Maybe a minute faster. A year later, I mentioned that half Ironman in September. A year later, I went from a 448 to a 431 in one season, in one
Wow.
year. I knew I started bringing over athletes that summer to start coaching them on TriDot. And then as soon as that half Ironman, I was like, okay, everyone's in the off season. We're all coming to TriDot. We're all giving this a whirl. And I could actually offer the athletes more services that I had to charge extra for, like strength training, like doing a real comprehensive strength training program and the proper periodization to get ready for that. So it's only accelerated my coaching.
That's awesome.
The athletes have great success stories as well. Like I've been working with Bonnie on RunDot. She came to me a year ago, and she's qualified for Boston once, but she didn't qualify by enough to make the cutoff. She came to me with a 3:35 marathon about a year and a half ago today. 3:35. So she ended up going 3:29. No, yeah, 3:29 a year later at the Beantown Marathon in Hingham, and that's enough of a time buffer to get her into Boston. This past spring, she just PR'd her half marathon. She did 1:32. Oh, and I missed the Philadelphia Marathon. She did 3:19 and change. 3:19. So in 1 year, I went from a 3:35 to a 3:19, and now we have her shooting for October, the Bay State Marathon. We're looking because we can predict, we can put a race on the schedule and actually see if you're following the RunDot training, what can we expect if we add no other races and we have proper time to develop, what can we expect? And we're targeting a 3:13 marathon right now. That's in a year and a half. Like that's 20 minutes. When she already thought she was at her ceiling, but I said, well, ceiling's go to heaven.
So talk to us about any new developments, new features on the horizon that you're excited about.
Yeah. So it wasn't too long ago that we had the ability to take someone's genetic genome and upload that to TriDot and RunDot. So anyone that's had a 23andMe, Ancestral.com, there's some other ones out there, but if you can get that raw data file, you can actually upload that right into TriDot and RunDot. And what that's going to do is going to help formulate and quantify that athlete's training stress profile, and they'll see actual changes. When I did mine, I found out that my muscle fiber type was 40% power, 60% endurance. So, and then I was talking to a buddy of mine. When he did his 60% power, 40% endurance. So we were like in the same athleticism at the time, and we were like comparing our times. He would do 15 something in the 5K. I would do 16 something. Later that year, he went 10:30 in Ironman California. I went 10:06 in Ironman Arizona.
Wow.
So it just goes to show, like, if him and I said, hey, if you and I are going to race head to head, it's going to be like a T100 or a half Ironman, because that's where our genetic profiles meet. Assuming we're training for the same events. So it's so cool how that comes into play. I also realized that I have a higher than I knew risk of injury, right? I've had all the running related injuries. Now I know why. And I would have a little bit of pain, and I would just push through, and eventually get hurt.
Yeah.
trying to think what else do we have coming in down the pipeline. So we're going to have a RunDot community coming very soon. So we just launched about a year ago the TriDot community, which is a community of athletes and coaches just helping each other. And coaches you will usually write like blogs and stuff of stuff that they're passionate about. Like I wrote a strength training is my background, so I wrote a very comprehensive strength training guide to it for so that someone could read and they could formulate a training plan. Right, talks about how just like swim, bike, and run, there's going to be periodization. You have to have a foundation. You have to have like a build phase, a mobility and stability phase, and then a peak phase. And it talks about exercises to select or suggest that if you have the ability to get in front of a trainer to do a movement assessment, because then the trainer is going to be able to tell you, okay, what movements patterns can you load safely and what ones should you stay away from? And here's your corrective exercises so that you can eventually load those exercises. There's dietitians in there, dietitian nutritionists in there that are running webinars once a month. So not only are they getting a great training plan, but they're also plugged right into the community. And then there's different subscription levels with one of them being what we call Legends, where if you're on that Legends subscription inside that TriDot community, you're put into a sub community called Legends where Mark Allen, McKeely Jones, Mike Riley, Craig Alexander, Rennie, Miranda Carefree. I know I'm missing some. Bobby McGee, running mechanics coach, are all in there, and they'll chime in. I was having a conversation with Mark Allen, and Chloe chimed in about super shoes. I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're geeking out here about super shoes, and saying you could too if you were part of that community, and you could ask a question and you'll get a professional answer from one of them too,
It's
which
very
is
cool.
so anything we can do to support
Well,
athletes.
this has been so informative. We could go on probably for another 2 sessions.
Yeah, we probably should have
Seriously. And maybe
like
we'll have a series. Maybe we'll do a series.
yes.
But unfortunately the time has lapsed, so we have to cut it short. But how could people learn more about TriDot, RunDot? I guess what I'll do is I'll put my discount code on the webinar. That's probably the best place to really find out about it. And I just want to say that Brady, you and the whole team are doing such an amazing job revolutionizing the world of endurance training. Whether you're an elite athlete or someone just starting their fitness journey, understanding how AI can play a role in maximizing potential is so empowering. And I am so excited to be part of this. So thank you very much for everything that you do.
Yes, thank you, Hillary. So yeah, Hillary I would suggest on the show notes, just putting in that free trial that you have so people that are curious can jump on board, give it a go. And then we'll welcome you with open arms to the TriDot or RunDot community. The RunDot community it's actually live now. So as soon as you sign up for RunDot, look out for the emails. You'll be invited into that community with a link. And we'll all be there waiting and welcoming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brady.
You're welcome, Hillary. That was a lot of fun.
This show was produced by Hillary Topper and sponsored by the Russo Law Group, Long Island's signature elder law, estate planning, and special needs law firm. For more information, visit vjrussolaw.com. And PlayTry, your multi-sport specialist for all your triathlon needs. They have so many opportunities, including franchising. If you love the sport of triathlon, check out playtry.com and learn more about opportunities, or if you want to shop there, check them out. They've got great prices and they've got amazing customer service.